Hey guys, this is Nye the Batman, and we have a very special guest on today. He's already technically made an appearance before because I've been reposting some old what means, but this is his
Mhm.
first official appearance on Nye the Batman. Ben, welcome.
Thank you. And the first thing I gotta say is I watched the show.
Finally, yes, yes.
Yes,
Watch
we did talk about
Gotham
this and
Knights.
yeah, we talked about this at LA Comic Con. I was like, you know what? This is a way better show than Titans. I know Titans got the budget, it's got the actual superhero costumes, but this is a way better portrayal of Gotham's world when you are limited to these characters. I think they did the best possible job they could have with the characters they had on that, and so I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed your commentary with you and Amanda on it. So
Thanks, man.
thank you for recommending it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the payoff after all those episodes.
Yeah, Amanda is here with us in spirit, and by spirit I mean the
Cool.
other room. But
No worries. Let her
yeah,
know I
yeah,
said hi.
yeah, we'll do. But hey, Ben says hi. Yeah, there we go. But
Nice.
what? Oh, okay. Yeah,
I didn't hear
don't worry guys, everything's good. But
it.
said she's dying of pain. She's fine. But
No, I'm sorry.
oh yeah, it's all good. But so yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get into we're gonna do something a little different this time. We're gonna
Mm,
go into some of Ben's creations. The first one I thought we'd cover since it is a Batman centric podcast. You did
mm.
a spec script for Gotham. Did you
Yes.
talk about that?
Gotham
Nice.
Vampire. Yes, this is a for those looking at the video, this is a commission I did from Dustin Lee Massey on the script. And it's based off of the cover of Detective Comics 31 with Batman at the top, then the castle, and then the monk. So for those who can see it, the monk is on this side. Originally, Dustin put it on the other side, and he's like, "It's better for composition." I'm like, "I know, but the original cover has the monk on that side. I know it doesn't work composition wise, but I need him on that side." So he had to settle for it. So oh
That's so
well,
cool.
it's my
Um,
commission.
Yeah, the thing I will say, I haven't seen as much Gotham as you have,
Mhm.
but the first compliment I think I'll go ahead and say off the bat was that you're off the bat,
Ah,
yeah, but was that your story felt more like a Batman story than I feel like a lot of the episodes of Gotham ever felt like a Batman story.
that was the intention. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And then like did you want to get into why you picked like the monk or
Sure,
that sort of
sure.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was written around the time where there was a lack of, and hold on, my cat just moved the camera.
It's
Uh,
okay.
it was written during a time where I think the show was trying to figure out what it was. So if you watch the first season, which is what a lot of people started off with, and they're just like, "Eh, this is kind of bullshit." They've got all the villains starting before Batman does, which like I get, but at the same time, I'm like, do you really think they were going to do this without a majority of the like reasons why people like Batman, which is like the villains? Like, of course they were going to put them in.
Yeah.
And I was really wanting more emphasis on Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And it just seemed there were like just full on episodes in each season where like he wasn't even there.
Mhm.
And I was like, this, like people are just like, this is a Batman show without Batman. And I'm like, it is Batman though. Bruce Wayne's there. This should be about his journey into becoming Bruce Wayne. I mean, into becoming Batman. Just in ways that fit his age. Of course, you're not going to see him don the suit when he's 12 years old, but you are going to see like the kernels being made. So I wanted something that was going to progress that evolution,
Mhm.
fit in the timeline of the show, and also something that would like have the beginnings of the partnership between him and Gordon, because those are the two main characters of the show. And so I got to brainstorming it, and I think it originally started not necessarily with the monk, but with the story Gothic
Mhm.
by Grant Morrison. And in Gothic, there is a backstory to Bruce Wayne before his parents died in the comic, where Bruce went to a boarding school that was run by a man named Mr. Winchester, who was believed to have been the one who was like killing children over there. It
Mhm.
was really dark.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we can have like that be sort of a thing in the story. And as I got through it, I was like, okay, in Gothic, the villain used to be his old schoolmaster, but he's also kind of immortal, seems to run off of blood, used to be a monk. What? Wait a minute. And then it made me think about the original Golden Age villain, the monk. And
Right.
I just always loved that because he's a vampire. And I was like, what if it's the same character? What if the monk and Mr. Whisper is the villain name in Gothic, but what if the monk and Mr. Whisper were the same person
Yeah.
in this continuity? You just combine them because then it becomes so much cooler because then I'm no longer just referencing an obscure, well, they're both obscure characters to be fair, but
Yeah.
it's Mr. Whisper is even more obscure than the monk. At least the monk, people are just like, oh yeah, I kind of know that from the original Golden Age or from the Matt Wagner update. But even in the Gothic comic, there one
Mhm.
of the covers is Batman looking over the castle and copying the
I
composition. So I
love that
think
cover.
Morrison, yeah. So Morrison knew like what was up. I think
Mhm.
Morrison knew their influences on that. So I was like, what if it's the same person? And it really struck me. I'm like, hey, what if this is like Bruce Wayne's first case then going up against this vampire and Gordon teams up with him and some aspects about this vampire, supposed vampire, influence Bruce's journey to become Batman, the journey to become, a creature of the night, black,
Mhm.
terrible, an omen, like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And he sees it being used for evil, that sort of persona, if it is a persona, and is like, he does have a line that I put in there where it's like, if only he could use it for another purpose, if he only could use it for good, that type
Yeah.
of thing. So it's planted in there, and I really wanted the beginnings of that relationship. And another aspect that I really wanted to put in was the idea of uh, Alfred's loyalty and where it comes from. Because in the show, right, we have a very long running storyline between Bruce and Alfred. And in like the comics and in the movies, it's kind of just generally understood like, oh yeah, that was his butler growing up and he's still stuck with him. But when you're like deep in the middle of it, dramatization wise, it's kind of just like this is an awful lot of stuff for a butler to be doing, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to put in some of an idea that I had around the same time. I think maybe it was either James Tynion or Scott Snyder. Somebody put this into the comic anyway.
Mhm.
But the overall idea of Alfred being guilt-ridden by the deaths of the Waynes because of the fact that he wasn't there or he took the night off or he wasn't there to pick him up because it was always
Right.
like, well, now that the comics made it so that Alfred was there from the very beginning, it's kind of like, well, then why were the Waynes walking back from the theater? Why didn't Alfred just pick them up, from in
Yeah.
Rolls Royce right outside the theater or whatever? Like, how come? And sure, like Nolan had the interpretation where like they left early through the back, which I was
Mhm.
like, okay, that's a clever way to explain that.
Yeah.
Um, but in this version, I was like, no, like what if Alfred's just guilt ridden by that, and he's always going to be there for Bruce because he feels like he failed um, Bruce's parents, and then flash forward to the Batman, and that's almost exactly what Andy Serkis's motivation is in the
Yeah.
Batman.
I was gonna mention that, but yeah, I
Yeah.
like that in the story you also, and you kind of hit on this too, that it's kind of like what they do with Spider-Man as well, but
Mhm.
the whole thing of having like antagonist be in both worlds, like it's like, like so like with my example, like Peter in that PS4 game is like he's
Mhm.
dealing with the guy that's over the feast organization, Mr. Negative, and but like
Mhm.
he's also fighting him unbeknownst to him. So like it's always cool when you can like kind of tie in that thing and like have it like be almost like a dual antagonist
Mhm.
kind of thing. I don't know if they really did that much. It's been a while since I've seen Gotham, but I don't think they did that as much.
There
It
wasn't
makes it
a
more personal.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I wanted something that showed the development of Bruce Wayne to make him involved in the actual cases, as opposed to like Gordon's on another case on a future Batman villain, and meanwhile Bruce Wayne is at home and has a fight with Alfred. Like it's
Yeah.
it was kind of disconnected for a while, and I wanted to like, why don't you just merge the two? That's what we want to see anyway, like the
Yeah.
relationship between Bruce and Gordon, and that was the A story, and then there is a B story too with the Penguin, um, that is, I mean, yeah, it's not really related to the vampire thing, but neither were a lot of their subplots in any of the episodes. So I was
Yeah.
like, I can get away with this. But it was mainly a way for me to be like, okay, what are aspects about the Penguin they haven't covered yet? And there were two aspects. One was the affection for birds,
Mm,
and the second one, the bigger one, was like the use of an umbrella as a weapon, not just because he's got the association in the show of like he's the
yeah.
umbrella boy for Jada Pinkett Smith, and that's why he carries around the umbrella. It's part of his trademark. But he
Mm.
never turned it into a weapon at that point. And I thought, maybe the show will cover it at some point. I was wrong. They never covered it. He
That's
just
ridiculous. That's egregious.
so. It's like, wait a minute. So I'm the only one who thought of this idea of the Robert Lord Taylor Penguin having a weaponized umbrella. Okay. Along with like the birds aspect. Because again, like the bird aspect is a part of, we look back at like the Silver Age or look
Mhm.
back to the very beginning of the Penguin comics, and usually there's some bird related thing that happens that carries over into the DeVito version, of course, with penguins, literally. And I just thought, well, just tie it together with like the pet shop is like the front, and so like he wants to, he develops an affection for these birds, and I thought, okay, like this would be a cool way to incorporate the comic stuff. But
Mhm.
if you put it in the continuity of Gotham, it just seems like, okay, it's nice. He's lined up with the comic continuity, and we never hear about the umbrella again. We never hear about the
Yeah.
birds again.
Drop storylines, but yeah,
Yeah.
they I'm surprised because that would so fit with the tone of that show, like the whole like gun umbrella thing. I'm like, guys, it was right there. Like you did all these other goofy crazy like balloon guy or whatever was the
Yeah, the Balloon Man, yeah, in the
yeah,
first
the
season.
second episode or
I
something.
was
I was
like,
like,
this umbrella thing is just not too much of a stretch. You can't tell me it was too comic booky for your
yeah.
show.
When you
Your
got
show's
people
most
floating in the air and then falling, yeah, it's like, come on, guys.
you had some of the silliest shit in this. You telling me the umbrella thing just couldn't cut it compared to Balloon Man?
No, no, we can't have comic accurate stuff in here. Come on. But
Man.
yeah, definitely. I liked that. I'm surprised that they haven't incorporated the Mad Monk into more like not just retro stuff, but like bring that guy back. Like the horror element, definitely New 52 had more of like the Batman mixed with the horror stuff. I'm
Mhm.
like, that's the perfect, like, speaking of obvious things, it's like bring him back, like have him have like maybe like a cult, or I could see him having like a cult or something like that,
Yeah.
where people like worship him or something. Like I could
Mhm.
definitely see something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
missing
I
persons kind of thing. Yeah.
I love the iconography of the character. It fit the world to me, and
Mhm.
I just loved having that aspect because it's like how at the time I was like, well, when am I ever going to really be able to write these characters again? Of course,
Yeah.
later on, I didn't know what was going to happen with NEUVERSE Creative, but I was like, let me
All
just
the
put my
time,
stamp.
turns
It's
out.
gonna, yeah. Like, at the time, I was just like, oh, let me just put the Bad Monk in there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And it was a joy because of the fact that that's a villain that like I'm honestly I'm not really drawn to ever writing a Joker story.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not in me outside of adapting one, but I'm not really drawn to writing a Joker story. But if it's a more obscure villain and to like try to elevate in a more obscure villain, that to me is more interesting than just like, okay, this is my take on this character that everyone has touched.
Yeah, that everyone has basically said everything there is to say about. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. They had to cut his face off just to do something new with him.
Right.
But yeah, cool. And I did notice that in your story, and I did say this before, it does, and I think the show has this too, but like kind of like almost Tim Burton-y elements to it, like with some of the imagery, like in your thing, it had it with like the cathedral and like that kind of that
Oh
set
yeah.
piece at the end. Like I really
Mhm.
liked that aspect of it, and it's kind of got a foot in that world. Were you inspired like to incorporate that kind of stuff because they have those kind of set pieces, or was that just something that you had an idea for the cathedral stuff?
The cathedral thing, I kind of took that more from Grant Morrison more than Tim Burton, but it was also like, yeah, that's my childhood Batman movie of '89 with the cathedral at the end. I can't resist that either. So it seemed too perfect. And part of that comic is the creepy nursery rhyme that I put in there of oranges and lemons, and I was like, what if that's a clue,
Yeah.
to the churches and stuff, to the cathedrals, and just it was too rich to resist in terms of having a cathedral set piece at the end, as well as like Bruce Wayne literally like jumping from the rafters like a bat in order to like save Gordon. Like I'm just like this has to be the ending. I can't do any other
Yeah.
version of this right now. It's not like we're going to travel to actual Transylvania like in the original Golden Age story.
Mhm.
So to me,
Oh,
like
they went to
it had
Transylvania?
yeah, the original Golden Age story doesn't even take place in Gotham.
Oh, wow.
It's in Europe, I think. So obviously we weren't going to do that. The show is called Gotham. It wouldn't really make sense, and it was one where it was just a no-brainer once I had that idea. I don't remember specifically like what got the cogs rolling on that in terms of like if I had trouble figuring that out or if that was like there from the beginning. But for sure, it was probably influenced by the Gothic comic by Morrison.
Gotcha. And I know that he or they and I think he goes by like he they, but like he I don't know if you know anything about like Morrison their background, but like it makes sense that
Hmm.
they made a character like that,
Yep.
considering like I'm sure you've heard like the famous like Grant Morrison Kevin Smith interview where like he goes into like his past
Oh
at
yeah.
like a boarding school and
Hmm.
everything, and like kind of the creepy teachers that were there and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Oh
So
yeah,
like
that's
that
has to be
doesn't
influenced by
surprise
that.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Hmm.
So he would have aspects of his story like that where it would be very like Silver Age-y, but then
Hmm.
like there would be almost like I'm not gonna call it edgelord stuff, but like just this like the Flamingo character. I remember where
Oh
like
yeah.
he's like he cuts people's faces off. I'm like, why? Like I'm just like Morrison, what's that have to do with anything, man? Come on.
Yeah, it runs the whole gamut, right? Because
Mm,
Morrison's very much about like Silver Age stuff that gets updated, but then there's like dark shit like that where it's like Flamingo and Professor Pig and it's all like fucked
yeah,
up.
yeah, and then
So yeah, I'm not
Pig was on
surprised.
there too, right? Like on Gotham, right?
So was Flamingo
Oh,
at one point.
really?
Yeah, they didn't put Flamingo in the pink.
Oh, I
Cowards.
was, yeah,
But
I was like comic book accurate. That's why I got excited for a minute. I was like, it's like Kevin Smith when he found out that on the Flash they had, I think it was either Gorilla Grodd or I think it was
King
King
Shark.
Shark. Yeah,
King
King
Shark, yeah,
Shark,
yeah.
and he's like, they got King Shark on there. I know I'm stealing a bit from Andrew. I know he mentions that all the time, but like it's still took me up.
Professor Pig, yeah, Professor Pig, I thought was well done on
Mhm.
there. There was a twist to it that I didn't like, but overall, like the actor did a great job, and they made him look like the comic book version. I'm not a big Professor Pig fan of the
Yeah.
comic version. I just think he gets way too twisted.
Hmm.
And it's not well, yeah, not twisted in the sense of like I think it's like too dark or violent, but more of like he's like so far gone. It's like I don't even really get him. Like I at least kind of get the Joker,
Right.
right? Like clowns, funny, death equals the punchline, whatever the fuck, like
Hmm.
I get that. But then Professor Pig, it's like, okay, this is he's so far gone. I'm like, I have no tracking on this character. And Gotham, I felt was almost an improvement in terms of what they were doing with that until the twist that I'm not going to give away. But and then Michael Service, who was the actor, was great in it and had a lot of creepy scenes. So
Nice.
overall, like they 90% got it right
Yeah.
with his character, I felt.
Gotcha. Cool. And I know like with your Gotham could never really pick a lane season to season, but like I feel like with your story, it was very like it had like momentum it was going towards. I remember season one of Gotham, it going all over the place where like there was like an
Mhm.
episode where I think he was like Bruce was like suicidal at one moment, and then the next moment was like I don't know, like they were trying to figure out what to do with him. I felt like in like episode to episode, like they didn't
Yeah.
really have a plan with him, but
Yeah, it was like, just
yeah.
make it a young Bruce Wayne show. It's already a prequel. Like, why don't you just make it about the
Yeah.
training? So that's
Or a
I mean, again,
detective show. Have him be a detective.
yeah, like a young detective with all this stuff that's going on in his everyday life. So with this, it's like it is just one episode. Because for those who don't know, like, what is this as a spec script? Is this just fan fiction? I'm like, kind of. What it is that in TV writing, a lot of times you have a writing sample that
Mhm.
shows that you can mimic the voice of a show when writing it. Because when you get hired to write on a TV show, you're injecting some of your own voice, but for the most part, you are there to assist the showrunner. You are there to assist the main person who is writing that show and emulating that type of voice. So you're demonstrating that you can do that with a random show. And of course, I was going to pick Gotham because it's like, well, this is the
Yeah.
Batman show. I gotta kind of have to do that.
It's your bread and
Uh,
butter.
yeah, and so it had with these spec scripts, they have to be kind of one-offs,
Hmm.
still kind of related to the rest of the show, but they still kind of have to be one-off. So it couldn't be like I'm setting up a major like season arc with the monk. I'm like, no, it has to be a one and done type of
Yeah.
thing. It has to be this, and it has to have a specific like arc that finishes at the end, whether it's Gordon's protectiveness or Bruce, you know, basically growing on his own as to become his own detective. Like that kind of has to be a complete thing in 1 hour, while still fitting in with the rest of the show, which is the whole like art of the spec script is to be able to do a solid one-off episode, yet still emulating what's in the series.
Gotcha. Yeah. And definitely. I know before we anything else about Vampire before we get into your new project, Alter Ego.
Cool. Mhm.
Do you have anything else or any other things, or do you want to go ahead and move on to the next one?
Uh, if anyone wants to check it out, it's on my website, benoitwriter.com. You'll see the big picture of the Gotham Vampire by Dustin Lee Massey, as well as like a commentary page that I have some other stuff in there. And I even put in a deleted scene because I'm just, again, it's like, who else is gonna read this? Major fans. But I put in a deleted scene of where Bruce has to beat Tommy Elliott in a chess match in order to like get a clue.
Yeah,
And I actually sent that to Cole Vallis, who played Tommy Elliott in the first season, was on our show at one point. We interviewed him about his experience as the young Tommy Elliott because he's the first actor to play that
yeah,
character in live action. And I sent it over to him, being like, I kind of wish that this thing actually existed so you could have done like this scene, and he really appreciated that. So that was a highlight for me, was to be able to share that. I'm like, even though it's not in the actual script, but I did write it. It got too long, and overall it just seemed like I was just trying to plug Tommy Elliott in just because I thought it would be fucking cool to just
yeah,
to just continue that arc, because Bruce does punch him in the face earlier in season one, and I thought they should have brought him back and made him a recurring antagonist to at least have a more fleshed out version of Hush's origin than the actual comic. I thought something like, if you're gonna do that, then like let's make him um his school villain, like the Draco to his Harry Potter, that type of
mhm.
thing. But they didn't go with that idea either, clearly, because they only had him for one episode.
Yeah. It's always weird when they'll like just have like one character. Like they did that with Harvey Dent as well, which that Harvey Dent actually looked like super comic book accurate and everything, and they just throw him
Right?
away, like they don't even use them. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why?
Again, didn't make sense,
Yeah, that's
but who
like
knows what happened behind the scenes.
they didn't have like I feel like they didn't I don't have anything to go off this, and also I probably want to be careful how I talk because they I might have Gotham people on in the future. It seems to me that there wasn't like a set map from season to season of like they didn't know what the final shot of the show was going to be, basically.
Right. Or how to get there if they did. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's understood the final shot of the show is Batman, but it's like, okay, well, how do you get there then?
Yeah, and that Batman looked it wasn't their fault that Batman looked really rough though.
Supposedly they had tried to ask if they could reuse one of the movie suits, and they said no. I'm like, yeah, you should have just, like, my feelings on the Dark Knight suit, but
Mhm.
that would have been better if they just had a stuntman in that suit. Because, like, I get it. I'm not going to expect them to build a whole new bat suit from scratch and have it look good.
Yeah. I mean, even Smallville. Like, look at Smallville. They reused the Superman Returns suit. I mean, when they weren't
Yeah.
using CGI, but like,
It was mostly CG.
well, you go back and watch it, and this isn't a Smallville podcast, but really quick while I'm thinking about it,
Mhm.
you go back and watch that scene. I think that they just crudely pasted Tom Welling's face. I think some of them are just Brandon Routh CG shots from
Yes, I
Superman
think so.
Returns that they
It
just throw
is
in there like we wouldn't notice.
the exact composition. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
But yeah, that was a whole nother disappointment. But anyway, now, alter egos.
Yes.
I'm alter ego. I'm not gonna do mispronouncing of the thing, but I want to talk about this. So tell me, there it is.
Yes.
Inspiration, kind of the premise for people that don't
Sure.
know, kind of just, you know,
So, Alter Ego is my first comic. It's an indie comic. It's self-published, and it's based once again on a TV script I had written, because not only do you write like spec scripts, but you also write your own pilots.
Mhm.
Um, and this was one that already fit a comic book world, because I've been talking to people at different conventions, and there's sort of a lot of comic book writers sort of look down upon the idea of like, oh, you just turned your script into a comic. It's not really, it was never meant to be a comic type of thing. And I'm like, listen, this has superpowers in it. Like, this was, if anything, it works better as a comic than it does as a TV show. So it was originally a pilot episode, and essentially the overall idea is that the main character, instead of being a superhero, is a guy who goes undercover as a henchman to take down a supervillain from the inside. That was sort of the
Mhm.
overall idea. And as I started fleshing it out, and I thought about, like, a year ago, I thought about, like, why don't I just turn that into a comic? It suddenly became, well, for it to be an ongoing comic series, I feel like I got to raise the stakes. So that's when it went from a supervillain to supervillains with the five families.
Yeah,
So now it's five families of supervillains have taken over the city. He becomes the henchman for like the top supervillain, but he still has to take down all these people who are way more powerful than him.
Yeah.
and keep his like alliance secret. So, I there's this whole thing about like Superman's too powerful and stuff. I'm like, well, I've deliberately put this guy whose main power is like total cognitive recall. He can pretty much like relive all of his memories. Um, and that's what makes him a great undercover agent. Unfortunately, he's up against people who can move shit with their mind and like are immortal or can control animals or can like duplicate. Like everybody's more powerful than him, which puts him at a disadvantage. So he just has to use his brain to outwit everybody in this. And the other aspect that I was really drawn to was the idea of, hey, you don't know anything about this world. This is not like a Batman movie where I use this example too when I was interviewed by Triple Threat Comics. But like if they said here's a cameo by Victor Freeze, you're just like, oh, that's the future Mister Freeze. Like you know his trajectory, you know exactly what's going to happen. If Batman's ever like um or Bruce Wayne is like on the way to becoming Batman, you never really question whether or not he's going to put on the suit. You know he's going to put on the suit. This is a guaranteed thing because you know these characters.
Yeah.
This is a world you don't know the characters yet. All you know is what I have in currently issue one.
Yeah.
So the idea was like, well, is my main character going to become a superhero who saves everybody by taking out the five families? Or is he a supervillain who takes out the five families and takes everything over himself because he's
Yeah.
fully capable of doing that too?
Yeah.
So it's like, is this a redemption story? Is this a further corruption story? Because he's already somewhat, morally ambiguous as it is.
Mhm.
So I loved playing around with that dynamic because you really engage the audience. The audience doesn't know for sure that, oh, he's going to suit up and save the day or
Yeah.
whatever it is. There's no guarantee about anything. And certain characters who seem like they're villains might not really be villains, and people who seem like they're on the good side aren't actually on the good side. Like all this type of stuff you can play around with that you just can't if it's another Batman Joker story, you know?
Definitely. And I did notice because I've talked to you off mic about the like how you didn't have superheroes in it. Almost makes it like a less hopeful world when you don't have like that base of like, well, like in other stories kind of like this, there's usually like that back door of like, well, like somebody's gonna come up or maybe the superhero, whoever's gonna come out and save them. But like with
Mhm.
this, there's only really it seems to be in this world that he's the only one. I mean, even the cops and everything in this world, I mean, cops in real life are corrupt, but like the cops in this one don't even seem to have the main character's best interest at heart. So it seems like
Mhm.
almost the whole world's kind of pushed against him in a way, which
Right.
really cool.
Right, because even though he is like somewhat morally ambiguous, he does things that you're just like, ooh,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But then he's very much the underdog, right? Everyone's
Hmm.
more powerful than him. The cops, in a way, are more powerful than him because even if they don't have powers, they have strength in numbers that he doesn't because he's one man. And
Yeah.
they've got, they make him go undercover because they end up blackmailing him. So he's an underdog at every turn, yet he's smarter than nearly everybody.
Hmm.
So that's the game. That's the dichotomy here. And I don't want to get too nihilistic with it. I try not to make it like where it's like, oh, this is so dark and it's all hopeless. It's more about the thriller aspects, the
Yeah.
stuff. So in terms of like inspirations you were asking, I mean, an obvious one is Batman No Man's Land because that's my
Hmm.
favorite like overall story arc where Gotham is like closed off from the rest of the world and it's been run by the rogues gallery of Batman villains. And so I wanted a similar type of look to it for Alter Ego, where it's like, okay, supervillains have taken over this world, except it's my supervillains
Hmm.
in this. So that was one, and then of course, I always think some of the most intense crime thrillers are undercover cop stories. So like The Departed, Donnie Brasco, that type of stuff, because of just the stakes are involved. I was listening to there's a podcast with Joe Pistone, who was the guy who's the real life guy who went in as Donnie Brasco, and it's like he had to become the best actor ever because there are no second takes. You
Yeah.
don't have a second take. You don't have rehearsals or anything. You have to be on your game the whole time, and just the amount of intensity to that. And I was just like, well, what if that's the guy? Like it's
Yeah.
it's that guy, but with supervillains as opposed to like just regular gangsters.
Yeah.
So those
Exactly.
were the big inspirations, I'd say.
Yeah, and like you said, like Jace, the character does take some pretty big swings where to quote Andrew, I don't know about that, but there's some stuff he does where I'm just like, I don't know about that. Like with the it's like that might come back to bite you later and be like, oh,
Mhm.
like you the thing with the character is like there's never a point, at least so far. Obviously, you know more about it than me. I've only read the first issue, but
Mm,
where the character hasn't really crossed a line yet where it's like too far. Like you kind of still sympathize with him because, like you said, he's like the bottom rung kind of thing, and you're just like, well, okay, I get why he's doing this, but then he'll go and do something where you're just like, oh, I don't know if I like this. Like,
right. I
oh, that makes sense.
understand, but I don't know. But that, yeah, that was the point, was to start him in that direction, like start him there, and then like, okay, where's he gonna go
Yeah,
on it? And you're like, well, everyone else is so much worse too.
yeah,
Like, I guess
exactly.
you're the best person here, but
Yeah,
still, and then it's playing around with that because there's definitely going to be more revealed about him and more evolution to him as he grows as a character.
yeah, because it's not like the boys where like that world is just kind of hopeless. Like yours still has like some slivers of hope to it.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, yeah. Did you have, because I know the villains each have their own kind of distinct look and feel to them. Was there any
Mhm.
like kind of inspiration for that, or did you like? 'Cause I know some of they're very different, like the
Right.
different families. So, do you have any
Yeah.
inspiration?
So we're not going to see a lot of the different fam. Well, you will with in the original script version before I
Mm,
developed the five families. It was mainly the Kaiser, who's like the head guy,
yeah,
and the Saint, who's my favorites. I think it's your favorite too, even that
yeah,
you did the did that variant cover
yeah.
uh for me. But
You guys will
yeah,
see that in the future, but yeah.
yes. Um, in terms of influences, I wanted obviously there to be like a big bad. You kind of have to have somebody who's like all powerful as like the big guy that he has to take down. So that was kind
Mm,
of easy to come up with. And then the Saint was um one where I'm like, I want a wild card character, but one that is not like the prankster wild card character. He's
yeah,
not like the Joker, he's not the trickster or anything like that. He's a wild card because it's basically, if Jace becomes a supervillain, he would be the Saint. If he had to become one, he would be
yeah,
like the Saint. Like the Saint is like a, as you can see, they kind of look similar too because
yeah.
they're.
I noticed that.
I wasn't in charge of the art. My artist kind of went with that, but in overall, right, he is somebody who, if Jace is able to play chess with everybody
Mm,
and manipulate them, the Saint's able to play 4D chess with everybody. Like he's
yeah,
just on a different level, which you'll see more and more in the future. But he's a guy who's like in charge of all the information and spies on everybody, and he also might be immortal. And you guys
mm,
are in trouble if you ever cross him, even though he seems at first to be like the most harmless out of everybody. Um, so there was that. And then later on, when I was like, you know what if it's like an expansion of it?
mm,
Oh yeah, and in the pilot as well. And in this first issue, one of the big villains is the judge. And the idea of he's the lie detector, he's a human lie detector,
yeah,
who's able to sense like when you're lying. And he's like, it's one where in this world, I'll reveal this, there's not an outright like Professor X telepath.
mm,
There are people who have specific telepathic abilities, but you're not going to find somebody who's just like, I can read your mind and I can influence you and all the Professor X stuff. Like it's very like specific things. So the judge is specifically a guy who can pick up on when you're lying. And I just thought that's the best possible villain to send an undercover agent against, is a guy who knows what his alliance is, and like how to try to manipulate him so that that lie detector doesn't go off the entire time. So that was a big thing. And then I was like, okay, well, I've got the Kaiser, and then the judge works for the Kaiser, and then I've got the Saint. So who are the other three? And so the others I developed were the gatekeeper. You only see these others in like a couple panels, but the gatekeeper was one who I wanted to put in the pilot. I just didn't have any room for him.
yeah,
But the idea was that the city is being protected by all the zoo animals
yeah,
that were there, and the gatekeeper is a guy who's basically Doctor Doolittle as a supervillain type of thing, where he can control the animals. Again, telepathy, but
yeah.
specifically for animals. So I thought that would be really cool. And then the next character I came up with was the Collective, which is one where I was like, we've seen, self-duplicating powers are pretty cool, but they
Mm,
also seem like it's always the B or C villains that are like
yeah,
that. And I wanted my own take on that because I'm just like, I feel like that they haven't fulfilled that potential. So I'm like, okay, the Collective is a self-duplicating army.
yeah,
They are like the big enforcers. If the Kaiser needs more backup, it's like, all right, boom, we'll get you like 30 more soldiers tomorrow because they can just self-duplicate.
Yeah.
And they all have different looks, and they're led by number eight. And there's a bunch of other, like, there's a whole backstory in terms of like why it's number eight and what happened to like the very first one. And because it's number eight
Yeah, what
because
happened to number one? Yeah.
clone number eight, yeah, and like who is the original, so that's
Yeah.
that's going to be revealed later. And then the last one I came up with was the host, because I was like, okay, I've got telepathy animals, I've got self-duplicating, I've got immortal guy. I'm like, what am I missing? And it didn't feel right to just make it four. I was like, it's got to be five. And that's when I was influenced by a lot of Stephen King with the host. So the host is a man who can,
Mhm.
again, with telepathic
Yeah.
empath type abilities. He inflicts pain into your mind. He can torture you just with his mind. And then another vampire aspect, he feeds off of your pain. He gets younger off of it, actually.
Nice.
Um, and he's basically, his look is based off of the master from Doctor Who, with like the beard and the goatee, and him all dressed up as a butler. Because again, he just looks different from everyone else there. He's like the most well proper dressed guy there, but also he's meant to be the worst. Like,
Yeah.
the Kaiser is like, okay, I kind of understand you. The Saint, you're like, okay, you're kind of fun, even though you're really a manipulative piece of shit. But then
Yeah.
the host was the villain that I want everybody to hate this guy. Like, this
Hmm.
is the guy that you're just like, when are you going to die already? When is Jace going to
Hmm.
like choke you to death and hang you or whatever? Um, and it won't be anytime soon.
Yeah.
So he's just a real piece of work, in terms of what I had. Like, all the dark shit I had in mind is going to go into the host, and he's in charge of the prisons. He's
Yeah.
in charge of the prison system of all the humans, so that he can torture them and just feed all
Yeah.
day. And I got the opportunity to show the host to Sir Derek Jacobi, who played the Master in, very briefly, in Doctor Who. He plays him more in the Big Finish audios, but
Hmm.
I did get to show him the concept art for him. I'm like, hey, this is the character inspired by, the Master and stuff. And I described the host in terms of like he feeds off your pain and shit. And Derek Jacobi just looks at me and he's like, and you conceived that. Like, yes. And then I
Awesome.
told him, like, yeah, he's one out of five supervillains. And Sir Derek was like, and do they all torture? And I'm like, well, he's the main one. That's his specialty. So
Yeah.
it was nice to be able to tell him that, since he's one of the greatest actors ever, I think. And it's always a great opportunity to at least tell somebody that you were inspired by them.
Now, is he, I'm not as familiar with Doctor Who. Is he in the older episodes or is he in like the,
He's the first master you see in the newer episodes. So in
okay.
the David Tennant series, they go to an area. They go to like this the Utopia world. It's called
Hmm.
Utopia, the episode, and it's revealed that this professor who's been helping them has the same type of fob watch that David Tennant's doctor has had, which means that he's secretly a Time Lord. And then when he
Hmm.
opens it, he's not another doctor, he's the master. And this is the worst possible idea for him to open it, because he's the worst Time Lord ever and starts killing people. And probably because they couldn't afford him for more than one episode, they kill him so that he can regenerate into the actor they could afford for two more
Yeah.
episodes for the master. But over at Big Finish Audio, which like expands upon the Doctor Who like lore and different characters, they do all these prequel audios
Hmm.
of the different characters, and a lot of the actors have gotten to reprise their roles. So Derek Jacobi has gotten to play the Master in adventures that take place before that episode. And of course, they had to do one where David Tennant from later on the timeline meets Sir Derek Jacobi from earlier in his timeline. And so, like,
Nice.
it was really trippy, but it's great. I love it, and he's amazing in that role.
Nice. Cool. And I did notice, looping back to the comic, I did notice that with the power set, one, I guess I'll start with this one. Was it hard to come up with like unique powers, like superpowers?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Because it was one where I'm like, I don't want just a guy who flies.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, this is. Well, I mean, obviously the Kaiser has like telekinesis, so
Hmm.
it's like, okay, but it's one where I said, hey, he's already got telekinesis, but he's like the most powerful dude, so like it's kind of understood. Everything else was down to this would be cool. I haven't seen that before, or if I have seen it, it's not with this type of character. It hasn't been paired with this type of character. So again, the Saint being immortal, like, we've seen that. Vandal Savage, Ra's al Ghul, if you count that, since it's Lazarus Pit, technically not his power, but um
Mad
that wasn't
Monk in
necessarily
your
anything.
script. Mad Monk in your script.
Oh yeah, Mad Monk in my script too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a thing for immortal guys, I guess. But
Speaking Blackfire for me, that's one of my favorite, like kind of C-list Batman
oh
villains.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah.
So, but I think the judge in the pilot was who stood out to people because of the fact that, like, okay, that's a more unique superpower.
Mhm.
And then for a while before I even came up with the concept of alter ego, I always liked the idea of a guy with like a super memory, um, because there are like different shades of it, different
Yeah.
nuances that could help that you don't really think about, other than just like, okay, fine, he can remember everything, so what? But then you factor in some of the things that I put in, where just like, hey, for a split second there, I saw that that guy had a knife. And so that's going to come in handy when I'm fighting him, even though all I needed was a second to see that, because all he has to do is replay it in his mind.
Yeah.
So it really comes into handy into fights and strategy, because he has to become the ultimate strategist in order to outthink everybody who can easily kill him. So that was a factor. And yeah, some of the other stuff was just, what have I not seen? What's
Mhm.
cool? What appeals to me? What do I want to write? That is not just, okay, this person has this X-Men superpower. Like it had to be something that I felt would grab people, which is also another reason why I wanted to start with, hey, here's the situation. Here are the five supervillains that we're up against, um, so that you knew from the get-go what the stakes were and what this whole thing is about.
Gotcha. And then I was gonna say, like, I've noticed that a lot of the character, well, actually going back for a second, I relate to the having a hard time coming up with superpowers because I had a series, I'm gonna start it back at some point soon, called The
Nice.
Fog, where
Mm,
it's he's got like his powers basically are like fog based, so like he can like make himself fly using that.
mm,
Like there's like a trail of like fog coming behind him, almost like smoke. But
mm,
and then like he can shape shift and stuff like that. But like the villains were a hard aspect too, because for him, I had a hard time struggling with trying not to make him overpowered because like when you really think about that power, like he can shape shift, he can almost do anything when you really think about it.
mm.
But with like the superheroes, I had that, or super villains, I mean, I had that too, where I'm like, well, what would be a cool thing? It's like, there's the robot guy that's kind of like half robot, half man, that's like ancient maybe, and like we're not sure, and like he, as like the little thing gets taken out, he has like almost a little arc reactor type thing. It gets taken
Mm.
out, he ages how he actually looks whenever that
Ooh.
thing is out of his system. But like just coming up with new things, because I don't know if you guys know this, basically every story in comic books that could be written has been written now, so it's kind of hard to come up with like a new spoke on the wheel and stuff
Yeah.
like that,
Hmm.
honestly. But yeah, I
Yeah. To
relate.
to me, it's about how you look at DC and Marvel comics, and people are just like, Marvel has this and DC has that, and I'm like, if you really, really dial it down, these are all the same characters, but with different power sets.
Yeah,
Like it's really different personalities mixed with a different power set.
yeah.
So like there's some aspects of Superman in Spider-Man, but
Mhm.
Spider-Man doesn't have Superman's superpowers. He has a different set of superpowers. Like there are aspects about like different characters that can all be combined into something else. So when I look at this, it's like, sure, the Saint is immortal like Vandal Savage, but he's
Mhm.
not Vandal Savage. He's got his
Yeah,
own like he's got his own thing going on. So it's a different pairing of personality type with the superpower. So it's less about like somebody being defined by their superpowers and more defined by their actual character. What's their actual personality? What's their end game? What's the way that they operate that makes
yeah.
them that character?
That's how it should be.
Yeah,
But definitely, I did notice, tagging back on a question I was going to ask before we went back to that one,
sure.
that a lot of the characters do have psychic-based abilities. Are we going to get a flashback explaining like how they got those powers? Have they always had them? Is that too much of a spoiler?
It's not too much of a spoiler. I mean, there's a fair amount of backstory that hasn't been revealed. When it comes to the psychic stuff specifically,
Mhm. Yeah,
um, I mean, there is a fair amount that I'm still exploring too in the
yeah,
story as of this. So I will say that I don't really know, to
yeah,
be just upfront on
yeah.
on that
It's
part.
okay.
If there's an element of hey, like, this is why all these people have different psychic abilities. It comes more from my desire to be like, hey, I think this is more interesting than just this person's a telepath. Because
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, well, at that point, then why don't you just do the Professor X thing and freeze everybody whenever there's a fight? Like this, it
Yeah.
becomes too powerful. But if it's like, oh, this person is limited to this specific telepathic ability, this psychic ability, then it becomes more interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I did notice that they were more, it's a grounded world and the power set is more like you were kind of saying with Professor X, it's more grounded in my head. I'm just like, that's probably so it doesn't look like it's this impossible goal. Like there's like they're
Hmm.
not like 100%. Like it's not like you said, like Professor X, where they can just go into your mind and cut off something and basically
Right.
take you out like that. So makes it a little
Yeah.
bit more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. There was a level of like I'm grounding it, but I also don't want it to be so grounded. It might as well just like why did I bother making this a superpower thing? It might as well just be The Departed, the comic book.
Yeah.
It had to be a nice balance to it, where it's like, hey, like this is not a world where Jace is going to put on a cape because it doesn't fit the story.
Mm.
But like these are supervillains. They can't just be guys in well outside of the host, but he's got a very they can't just be guys in suits, is what I meant.
Yeah.
But it's like business suits.
Yeah.
So the host, yeah, he's in a suit, but he's in like a full-on tuxedo. Like the Saints got the whole like priest type of thing. Um, Going on. I will say, I'll put this out there.
Okay.
Originally, it was meant to be that the priest wears an infinity necklace rather than a cross because I didn't want it to be like, oh, he's clearly the priest is the villain type of thing.
Yeah.
And then I just missed it when it came to the other pages where it just became a cross again. And so I am going to have a story explanation for that in terms of why it's an infinity necklace sometimes and a cross sometimes because he switches it based off of like who he's with.
Nice.
So that there'll be an explanation for that. But yeah, that was not deliberate. That was just me not realizing that he did that and not correcting that.
Hmm. Cool. Is this just a singular story or is this going to be an ongoing series or what are your plans, future plans for Alter Ego, the Alter Ego
Right.
universe?
So my main plan right now is to get these four issues out there for the first chapter of the story, which is like what does he do to get integrate himself in here,
Yeah.
and what does he do about the judge when he's being supervised now at all times by a guy who knows when he's lying.
Yep. It's not
So
admissible in court though, so I mean there's that, but sorry I had to
yes,
do
if only there was
it.
a world where this was a world that had a court, So
Yeah. Kangaroo
it's
court.
there'll be the four issues, and then I'm mapping out everything else that happens afterwards. I have an overall idea of what happens to like I know Jace's arc, I know what
Mhm.
happens to the judge, the Kaiser. Like I have like overall arcs in mind for everybody. It's just now that this is in an indie format as opposed to a TV series format, there is a limitation, in terms of how much I
Yeah.
can get out there because it's like, okay, I'm glad I got this first issue out there. Can
Mhm.
I realistically do this 99 more times on my own though?
Yeah.
No. So, like, how else can I continue the story? In what format? What comic format can I continue the story in the best way possible that serves it while also serving the fans and being somewhat affordable for me to do it?
Yeah.
That's something I'm still fleshing out, but I do think that there is probably a way, and I do have plans in the future beyond just the first four issues.
Cool. So definitely looking forward to that. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up right here. Let you do your plugs, and then I'll do my plugs, and then we'll go ahead and do our non-outro outro that we do at the end of every show.
Sure, sure. So yeah, you can check me out at benoitrider.com. That's where you'll get the links to all sorts of great stuff with the Gotham Vampire script, as well as to the 5-page preview to Alter Ego, as well as the link to the Amazon, where you can either get it on Kindle or on print. So you can check that out. You can also check out my podcast, Superhero Stuff You Should Know, which Alex has been a guest on and patron on, and has plugged our show many, many times, and we've tried our best to return the favor. So thank you for
Very
that, Alex.
incestuous, but yeah.
That's how it is, right? I think I saw it like there was a podcast parody of a guy, uh, and I guess it's him playing both roles, but all they're
Yeah.
doing is just talking about other podcasts and being on each other's podcasts for like 5 minutes. Uh,
It
but yeah,
happens.
check those out. Superhero stuff you should know.
Mhm.
And outside of that, just be on the lookout for more issues. With number two we're aiming to get that out by the end of the year.
Oh, here we go. I'm also, on top of being his friend, I'm also a fan of his work. So
Mm.
I'm right there with you guys out here listening. I'm looking forward to the next issue. But
Thank you.
let me go ahead and I'm gonna suck my breath in real quick because I got a lot of podcasts to say. Here's my
Go
plugs. All
ahead.
right. Here we go. So I have obviously this show, Night of the Batman. We do it. We're trying to get back to doing it weekly. Me and my wife talk everything Batman. Originally, it was another show I did by myself, but now we have this. It is her show. She will tell you that if you listen to it, it is her show. But yeah, and then the next one is Flashbacks, a Flash rewatch podcast. We are currently still in the first season. We're getting towards the Trickster episode where we will switch off and cover the 90s show a little bit to give my co-host context for the Trickster
Mm.
parts of it.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. And then after that, tangential exchange, me and my friend basically drink, and that's more of a laid back show where me and him are just catching up. It's for me when I get old and sad and reminiscing on the past. I can look back to that and be like, oh, I still have these. But yeah, and then I promise what mean is coming back eventually. I just
Oh,
have to
nice.
get some stuff together. But yeah, that's me. And would do you know the outro? Because I could say it if do you remember it? It's not an outro. I could say it.
I remember it not being an outro. I don't remember the specific words.
I got
Something about
you.
you guys coming up with it later.
Yeah,
I
yeah. Well,
think
we'll say it. Tell you what, we'll say it together, and maybe the delay will work to where it sounds like we're saying it at the same time. We
we'll
will
try it.
come
Yep.
up. Okay, here we go. One,
Okay, here
two,
we go.
three. We will
We
come
will
up
come up
with an
with the
outro.
outro.
Uh, I messed it up. We'll come up with the outro eventually.
Eventually.
There we go. We
Nailed
made it,
it.
guys. We made it to
First
the end of
time.
the show. Awesome. Thanks for listening, Ben. Thank you always for being on. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for bringing
And
me on.
yeah, and your first official foray into the Batcave. There's a flash thing back there. Ignore it. But the hold on, the Batcave back here. Yeah,
Yes.
with all the figures and everything. So welcome to
It's awesome.
the Batcave. All right,
Hmm.
that might be the outro. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.
See ya.
All right, see ya.